All right, everybody. Welcome to the channel. This is a breakdown of UFC Fight Night 210 featuring Sandhagen versus Song. Really looking forward to this fight. I just want to go through the different matchups, kind of give a little background context on some of the different fighters, kind of which fights to look out for, and obviously give my picks on the fights and let you know kind of what I'm thinking for tomorrow night. So starting off the preliminary card, which will be at 4 p.m. Eastern time. First bout of the night is going to be a lightweight one between Nicholas Mota and Cameron Van Camp. This will be both of their second fights in the UFC, I want to say. Mota coming off a Dana White Contender Series appearance where he looked pretty solid. And then going into his first fight, he got matched up against UFC veteran Jim Miller. Jim Miller ended up winning that fight by knockout, continuing Jim Miller's knockout streak. So that was a hell of a performance from Miller. Mota definitely showed some real skills in that fight as he did in the Contender Series. So definitely look for him to come out here with something to prove and wanting to kind of show why he belongs on the big stage. And similarly, kind of same can be said for Van Camp. Van Camp made his UFC debut at UFC 274 on short notice, coming in against Andre Fili. He lost that fight by first round knockout. So both these guys, second UFC fights, lost their first fights by knockout in the UFC. So definitely looking in to come and prove something. With that being said, I think I'm gonna go with Mota on this fight. I think Mota is just a little bit more well rounded than Van Camp, and with that, I think that he has more options to win this fight. So I'm gonna take Mota on this one. And then second fight of the night is gonna be Javid Basharat and Tony Gravely, bantamweight bout. Two real strong and solid UFC fighters. Basharat, of course, has had a lot of kind of hype and excitement behind him. The dude's a real solid striker and just really crisp, really well rounded. I'm really high on the guy, as a lot of people are, and really expect big things out of him in the future. Undefeated, of course, 12-0. Once again, Dana White Contender Series alumni. A lot of the fighters on this card are former Contender Series fighters, so that's definitely going to be somewhat of a storyline, I'm sure, throughout the broadcast and some of the fight lead up and introductions and whatnot. So this is Basharat's second UFC fight as well. Looked really good in his debut. And of course, Gravely is also a Contender Series alumni. This will be his seventh UFC fight, so he's definitely more of a veteran. He's coming off a 2-fight win streak, and then before that, he had a wild fight with Nate Maness. And in that fight, Gravely looked pretty damn good, and got about as close as you can get to stopping the fight and knocking out Nate Maness in the first round, I want to say, before Maness was able to go back to the corner, kind of recover a little bit, came out for the second round, and then Maness actually knocked out Gravely. So that was a wild back and forth fight. I'm not sure if that one won fight of the night that night, but either way, it definitely would have been a strong competitor for fight of the night. So Gravely is a real dog in the UFC. Great wrestling, really strong wrestling, power in his hands. So definitely looking forward to this one. I think we're going to really see here if Basharat's kind of the real deal and the hype train continues, or maybe he's got some things to work on. So with that, though, I think Basharat's going to come out on top here. I remember, I want to say this past week, his brother fought on the Contender Series as well and got the win. So he's already there in Vegas, been training, kind of in that mindset, so to speak. So I really expect big things out of Basharat, and I think tomorrow night's going to be no different. So I'll take him to get the job done. Then moving on is going to be Maria Agapova and Jillian Robertson. Agapova looked really good in her UFC debut, which came against Hannah Cifers. Got the first round finish. I was really impressed by that. So after that, I think me, along with a lot of other people, were expecting real big things from her. Second fight came against Shanna Dobson, and Dobson ended up getting the win in that one in a massive upset, with her being a huge underdog. So Agapova just didn't really look that great in that fight, which was kind of a shock compared to how incredible she looked in her debut. And then since then, some stories came out, I want to say, with her getting potentially kicked out of ATT because she had some maybe drug issues, or even threatened some training partners with a knife or weapons or things like that. So just some wild things. Since then, I think she's maybe kind of gotten some things together and looked a little bit better. But either way, she's definitely a bit of a character, I guess, so to speak. And then her opponent, Jillian Robertson. Of course, if you've watched the UFC for some time, you're probably familiar with Robertson. She's got the red hair, Canadian fighter, trains with Dean Thomas, real solid grappler with good submissions, just a well-rounded UFC veteran at this point. So, with that being said, and this is a flyweight bout, by the way, apologize, but I think Robertson will get the job done. I think she's just more well-rounded, more experienced, and I think that's really going to show in this fight. So I'll take Robertson. Next fight is going to be Trey Ogden and Daniel Zellhuber. Ogden fought Jordan Levitt in his last fight, losing a split decision, but he definitely had some moments in there where he showed that he has some legit skills. And then Zellhuber, of course, Contender Series alumni. He's an undefeated fighter, younger. I want to say he is maybe 23, 22. He's a pretty young guy, a Mexican fighter. Definitely showed some real skills in his Contender Series appearance. And this is a lightweight bout. I'm going to take Zellhuber in this one. I think that he'll be able to get the job done. I think he's just, a little bit better than Ogden in some ways, and his striking's pretty good. So I'll take Zellhuber in this one. Moving on, it's going to be Loma Lookboonmee and Denise Gomes in a strawweight bout. Lookboonmee at this point is somewhat of a UFC veteran. She fights out of Thailand with the Hickman brothers, I want to say. She's got a real solid Muay Thai base and Muay Thai kind of fighting experience, so pretty good striker. She's shown that in some of her fights, even though they were losses. She's shown some pretty good skills and has some pretty good performances against some top competition like Angela Hill. Angela Hill. And then in her last fight, I want to say she fought Lupi Godinez, and she had her moments in that fight as well. So Lookboonmee is definitely a little bit more experienced. And I'm really not too familiar with Gomes. I want to say this is her UFC debut, so don't really know what to expect. So with that being said, I think I'm just gonna hedge my bets and go with Lookboonmee, just given that she is the more experienced fighter, been in the UFC before, kind of been there, done that, and but like I said, I'm not as familiar with either of these fighters, so I'm really intrigued to see kind of how they match up and get to become more familiar with Gomes moving forward. And then for the next fight of the night, it's actually going to be Trevin Giles and Louis Kosi, which will be a welterweight bout, and I'm really looking forward to this one. I think this fight's definitely one to look out for on the prelims, and that's just because of the fighting style between these two guys. They say matchups makes fights, and I think this is a great matchup just stylistically. Giles, of course, former middleweight fighter. He's now at welterweight. This is his second fight at welterweight. The dude's got really, really good striking, I think. Or maybe not really, really good, but really fun striking to watch. He has his hands low, has real power in his hands. Just kind of has like a real interesting sort of style, almost like more of a boxing style, like you see sort of with Bobby Green at times. Low hands, kind of head movement, trying to lean out of the way of the punches, which comes at a cost, of course. You saw that in his fight against Dricus du Plessis, where unfortunately Giles got knocked out. Wasn't able to slip the punch, got caught, and that's just part of the game. That's part of the game. You play with a style like that. Kosi, on the other hand, I mean, the dude's a dog. He is tough as nails, not afraid of being in a slugfest. His last fight, you saw that against Sasha Palatnikov. Kosi's just a solid all-around fighter, but I think Giles is just a little bit more skilled and also more experienced. That goes without saying. He's had some real solid wins against Roman Dolidze, Bevan Lewis, and even James Krause. So those are all pretty solid names to kind of have on your resume to get wins over, with the losses against du Plessis, who's looked pretty damn good, and Michael Morales in his last fight as welterweight debut, which Morales is a really promising young prospect, so there's no shame in either of those losses. I expect Giles to bounce back here, and I think that he's just a better fighter and a little bit more skilled than Kosi, and I think that's really going to show tomorrow night. So I'll take Giles in this welterweight bout. And then to kind of headline the prelims, it'll be Damon Jackson and Pat Sabatini. The Leech, Damon Jackson, is a veteran, fought in the UFC way back in the day. Since then, he had a pretty solid long career in the LFA. And then recently, in the last couple of years, he's come back to the UFC. He's had some pretty good performances. The most notable, which is probably his knockout loss to Ilia Topuria, which is, you see that on highlights all the time. Um, but the dude's really, really good. He's a well-rounded fighter. Both of these guys are kind of wrestlers with some real solid submission ability as well as some pretty decent striking. Um, Jackson's riding a 3-fight win streak I see here coming into this fight. So, he's going to come in confident. Sabatini, of course, undefeated in the UFC, fights out of Daniel Gracie's academy in Philly. Um, I don't know. I think this is a pretty damn good matchup. I think these guys are pretty they have a lot of skills to kind of balance each other out. So it'll be interesting to see kind of who's the better of the two. Who's the better wrestler, who's the better jiu-jitsu practitioner, and potentially with some fights like this, you often see them end up being kind of stand-up slugfest. So who knows what's going to happen in this fight? I'm going to take Sabatini though. I just think that I think this guy's got a lot of potential. He's definitely super confident coming into this fight, and I just have a feeling that he's going to be able to just get the job done. So that's my pick for that fight, and of course that's going to be a featherweight bout. Sorry. And then next will be the main card, which main card kicks off at 7 p.m. Eastern time. And to lead off that is going to be Anthony Fluffy Hernandez and then Marc-Andre Barriault. So this is an interesting fight, I think. Hernandez, of course, had that incredible win against, or submission even, against Rodolfo Vieira, which was wild. So if you haven't checked that out, I definitely recommend going back and watching that fight. Hernandez he's a gamer. He's shown that he's had some ups and downs in the UFC with his fight against Kevin Holland, of course, and then obviously some real high highs. So he's an interesting fighter. I'm a fan of him, California guy. And then Barriault, of course, is somewhat of a UFC veteran. Power Bar, that's his nickname. The dude's got a crazy gas tank. The fight before last, he had gotten knocked out by Chidi Njokuani in the first round, which was pretty wild. But then his last fight, he had a pretty good guillotine choke win over Jordan Wright. So Barriault's coming back on this with kind of some more confidence. But I don't know. I think that it's a pretty evenly, as far as skill wise, I think matched up bout. These two middleweight fighters that definitely have had some ups and downs in the UFC. But I'm gonna take Fluffy Hernandez on this one. Maybe I'm a little bit biased being a California guy myself, but I'm gonna go with Anthony Hernandez. I like the guy. I kind of want to see him succeed, but at the same time, definitely wouldn't be surprised whatsoever if Barriault ends up getting the win here. Moving on from there, another Canadian fighter, Tanner Boser, is going to be matched up against Rodrigo Nascimento in a heavyweight fight. This is an interesting one. I think Boser definitely had a streak there where he had some pretty solid performances with some wins over like Felipe Lins and then Pessoa. But then since then he struggled a little bit against like Arlovsky, Latifi, and then most recently fought OSP in the heavyweight bout and had a win there. I know he's had a number of bouts canceled since. I'd have to, off the top of my head, I don't remember if that was injuries or just fights falling out or what the deal was with that. But this is his first fight this year. So it's been a little bit for him to get back into the octagon. But I definitely expect him to come out and kind of show once again like why he belongs in that heavyweight division and show the kind of threat he is. And then Nascimento, I don't know. I mean, he has some pretty heavy hands, good striking, but he seems pretty raw to me from what I've seen from him. So with that being said, I think I'm going to take Boser in this one. I think Boser's just a little bit more well-rounded, has more ways to win the fight. So as a result of that, I'm going to take Boser in this one. Moving on from there, it's going to be Alan Amedovski and Joe Pyfer. This will be Pyfer's UFC debut. He's a Pennsylvania guy, Philly guy, I want to say. He looked really impressive in his Contender Series appearance with a knockout in the second round. So I'm expecting big things from him, and I think a lot of people are. And Amedovski, on the other hand, he's kind of struggled, to be quite frank, in the UFC. I want to say he's 0-3 in the UFC, so respectfully, he's probably kind of fighting for his job here. So obviously, with that, he's probably going to come out guns blazing, looking to get the finish or definitely the win. So Piper's going to have to weather the storm, but I expect him to do that, and I think Piper's striking is really just gonna be able to take Amedovski out. So uh, in the middleweight bout there, I take Piper in this one. Moving on from there, we got Andre Fili and Bill Algeo, two UFC veterans, two really fun guys to watch. Pretty unique styles, and stylistically, I think this is a great fight. Kind of somewhat similar in some ways. Fili, of course, Team Alpha Male guy, longtime UFC veteran. I want to say he's had some struggles as of late. Let's call it that. He lost his last fight in the first round by knockout, and then before that, I think he had a win against Charles Jourdain. But other than that, I want to say he's like 1-4 in his last 5 appearances or so. So he could definitely use a big win here. And Algeo has had kind of almost somewhat opposite of that. Algeo's coming off of 2 wins, and actually looking here, the guy that Fili lost to in the first round, Joanderson Brito, Algeo actually holds a win over Brito. So obviously, MMA math is spotty to say the least. It's not like 1+1=2, but that's an interesting statistic that I think you definitely want to be aware of. So I'm gonna take Fili in this one for some reason. I think Fili has a lot of skills. He's shown that in the UFC, maybe just not the consistency. And I really just think that for some reason he's gonna be able to get the job done. So featherweight bout, like I said, I think Fili will get it done over Algeo. And then co-main event, it's going to be Chidi Njokuani and Gregory Rodriguez. Middleweight bout, Rodriguez, Robocop, as they call him. He's definitely looked pretty damn good in the UFC. Other than that, the Contender Series loss he had a couple years back, the dude's been a machine, just all kinds of finishes, most of which knockouts, which is kind of wild considering that he's a jiu-jitsu fighter, as far as I understand, or that's where his kind of base experience comes from. So the dude's got real power in his hands. Last fight against Julian Marquez, you saw that on full display. Crazy knockout. And Njokuani, kind of similarly, a veteran, long time. He fought in Bellator. He's fought in the RFA, a number of different promotions, and geez, I apologize for the sirens here. Definitely gonna try to work moving forward to get rid of some of that outside noise. So I apologize for that. Bear with me. But Njokuani, he's riding I see here a 4-fight win streak, all of which finishes. So his confidence is going to be sky high, very experienced. And Njokuani, in my opinion, is just a better striker than Rodriguez. Rodriguez will certainly have the power advantage to some extent. But then again, Njokuani really showed that power against Barrio, as I mentioned a little bit earlier when I was talking about his fight. So if this fight is on the feet, I think Njokuani's got this thing all day. But with that being said, with the matchup, I definitely could see Rodriguez trying to mix in more of his grappling to kind of mitigate some of those risks. But I think Njokuani, I'm really high on this guy. I want to see him succeed. He's a veteran, really kind of paid his dues and earned his way to get to the UFC. So I got Njokuani taking the win in the co-main here. And then, of course, last but not least, we got Corey Sandhagen and Song Yadong, or Yadong Song. Bantamweight bout, 5 rounds, main event of the evening, all that good stuff. Song Yadong, or Yadong Song, I apologize. I always kind of forget how to pronounce it, but he's 24, super young, another Team Alpha Male guy. Definitely looked pretty damn good in the UFC, coming off of a win over Marlon Moraes. Before that, Julio Arce, Casey Kenny. He has one loss in the UFC by Kyler Phillips, and that was a pretty close fight. So Song Yadong, definitely pretty high on this guy. Can definitely see him potentially getting the win, but Corey Sandhagen is just He's a killer. One of my favorite fighters in the UFC. Been a fan of his for a long time, since fights against like John Lineker. I think everyone who watched his fight against Alcantara was a fan after that. The way he was able to get out of that arm bar and ultimately get the win, I think that was pretty badass. So Sandhagen, like I said, one of my favorite fighters in the UFC. I'm still adamant that he will be UFC champion one day. So because of that, I got to take Sandhagen here. I think he's just too experienced, too well rounded. His striking in the matchup, I think, is pretty tailor made for him. Song Yadong's much more of a power puncher, kind of heavy footed striker. Sandhagen, incredible movement, super loose, relaxed, with his stances, can kind of fight anywhere in the octagon, on the ground, off his back, on top. Of course, his striking's top notch. Doesn't get much better than that. So I think Sandhagen's really going to show here kind of why he's that dude, and really remind everybody that that he's a guy that very easily could be holding the belt today if a few things went a little bit differently. So I got Sandhagen to finish off the night, and I really expect him to show out and have a really impressive performance in this fight. So with that being said, that kind of wraps up the fights. Kind of went through all of them. Of course, 14 fights, so long night of fights, which is or 13 actually now at this point, because Sarah McMahon and Aspen Ladd ended up getting canceled earlier today, with Aspen Ladd weighing in overweight, and we're missing the weight limit, I should say. And then, of course, originally we were supposed to see Sadiq Youssef and Giga Chikadze, but that fight fell through. Chikadze, I believe, suffered an injury, so that fight, now Sadiq Youssef, that he got rescheduled for another opponent next month, I want to say. So bit of a bummer to see those two come through, but still got 13 fights tonight, or tomorrow night, at the Apex. Should be an awesome night of fights. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, and look forward to breaking down the fights in a couple weeks here, because there's no UFC next weekend, but the one after that we do, returning with Mackenzie Dern and her fight. So look forward to seeing you guys then, and have a good day all. Peace out.